downline has definitely grown. We're absolutely kicking butt, but we're not here to necessarily talk about us, ourselves, and our business. We want to be able to create value for the audience. So for those of you guys that are here, just want to take a minute to say thank you guys for being here with us, joining us. And we want to be able to, provide to everyone on how to finish the year strong and what are some things that we can work on. What are some things that you can do? Obviously, as far as the year is concerned, you're like, what are you talking about finish the year strong? It's barely July. Well, we know how it works. Okay. The year is upon us. You got to finish and you got to run through that finish line. And unfortunately, a lot of agents, are struggling. So let's look at what are the things that we can do to help agents get to that next level. So since we have Bryan as our guest here this week, let's just jump right into it. Bryan, what are some things that you're seeing your clients with basically agents in general that they're either missing the mark, they're not paying attention to?
That's a whole can of worms, Rob. I could probably talk an hour about that. A few things, right? As I'm having more personal conversations with agents, one thing that it still blows my mind and it surprises me is how lackluster a lot of agents are in both their follow-up and also their CRM and their database. Like when I'm talking to a lot of agents, even some that are producing and doing okay, they almost entirely neglect their database and it's just chasing the next deal. So that's one issue. But the other one that I'm seeing right now is because, there's some more complications in the market and things have kind of, people are being bombarded with all this uncertainty. It's maybe required a little bit more follow-up and a little bit more massaging and a little bit more of a deeper conversation with clients. And a lot of agents either they don't have the skill set or they don't have the threshold to continue to follow up enough to convert that client into an appointment and eventually into a listing. So those are two big things, but I would say especially the database, it just blows my mind how people are inconsistent with their database. They're not being purposeful about building it and they're not working it. Like I just had an agent who joined my coaching program like a month ago. I said, dude, the first thing we need to do, I want you to literally go through your database this whole entire week and just call them. And that's it. That's all your prospecting. I think that week he set like 8 appointments for buyers and sellers, just calling his database. And I was like, dude, all it took was you sitting down and picking up the damn phone and you set 8 appointments in a week, which is more appointments than he had set in months. It's right there. It's the gold mine. But I know like Robert, you're really big on the traditional stuff. So are you, James. This is stuff that we've been telling to people for years. But you really got to double down on that stuff and go through your database with a fine-tooth comb and be purposeful. And make sure that every single day you're contacting them, you're doing the emails and all the basic stuff. And for the agents who maybe are doing a little bit better, are in a better position, make sure that you're also doing client appreciation parties and events. I do those twice a year, and that's a requirement for everybody on my team to do twice a year. And at those events, they're great. We just did an event for one of my agents pretty recently, new agent, about a year and a half in, he had like almost 100 people show up, right? And from there, he had great conversations. They got to meet his vendors. He's already set more appointments for the next couple of weeks for buying and selling, and it's awesome. But these are the foundational, fundamental things that we're getting farther away from because everybody wants to be a TikTok star.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you're talking about my favorite topic, and that's of course personal database. As far as that is concerned, why do you feel? I mean, I know why. This is basically preaching to the choir at this point. But why do you feel that that's something that a lot of agents are missing the boat on, database?
There's a few reasons. One, this is especially for newer agents, right? They have this like internal conflict where on one end it'll be easier for them to have a conversation with a complete stranger that they don't know. But when it comes to the database, they'll say, you know what, Bryan, I'm embarrassed to ask somebody that I know for business. And I'm sitting there like, dude, these people know you. They would want to support you in your endeavor to grow your business as a real estate agent. Why would you feel uncomfortable? That one, although a lot of times people won't admit it up front, I think internally that's a big issue for people. Number two, I still believe that agents, for whatever reason, it's like running their nails down a chalkboard to get them to prospect. Because we're in an era now where people are being bombarded, even I am, right? With just all these ads and all this, oh, do this and do a Zoom call to get listings and basically everything except for what we preach and what we built our businesses on. So from their standpoint also, I think people are viewing it from like, well, I can do what Robert and Bryan and James said, or I can just do this thing, film this video, sign up for this webinar, and I'm going to get listings. Well, this option sounds easier, right? So I think it's also a matter of that, is they're going for that magic bullet or what they think seems easier versus failing to see that long-term potential of working your database and what it can do for you. Because I'm sure they tell you guys too, people are sick of having to chase the next deal. Well, if you build your database right, eventually stop chasing business and it'll come to you, but you got to build it, right? But that's going to come later on down the line and not immediately. So that immediate gratification too, I think, is what people are being pulled away from when they go to all these magic bullets and new solutions, you know? But it's interesting because you look at the statistics and they keep getting worse and worse, but people are getting farther and farther away from traditional stuff that we've been preaching for years. And they're going more towards all the digital stuff, the AI. Like I'm sure you guys saw, YouTube's not going to monetize AI content anymore after July 15th. It starts today because people are just doing these faceless YouTubes and low effort, you know, repackaging of data. And finally, YouTube said, you know what, we're not going to monetize that.
Yeah, James.
You know, to piggyback off of what you guys are talking about when it comes to the database, right? What we're hearing and what our clients, more importantly, are hearing in the news all the time is that the market's not good. You know, things are shifting. And while there is truth to that, it's important. And I think moving forward over the next 6 months towards the rest of the year, where you can really set yourself apart from a lot of the other agents is, like Bryan had mentioned, reaching out to your database, being the expert and letting them know exactly what's going on in their local market, right? Because what's going on in Florida might not be what's going on in California, which might not be what's going on in Arizona, and so on. So rather than letting your clients or your database get a bunch of bad information or maybe inaccurate information about the market from the news or from TikTok or whatever, you need to be the expert. You need to solidify yourself as expert by reaching out and informing them, hey, I apologize, I haven't talked to you in 3 months, but I wanted to call you and let you know this is exactly what's going on in the market here in Tallahassee or whatever, because it could be a lot different than from what they're hearing or seeing on the news, right? It could be better, could be worse, but whatever it is, letting them know exactly what's going on is going to lead to conversations about who they know that's potentially thinking of.
Yep.
Yeah.
You want to be the resource. You know, that's totally true.
Yeah, the other thing too that I'm seeing right now, which is crazy, because talking about, you know, the old school versus new school, if you want to call it that, with social media, and then we have, of course, the more traditional business, which is picking up the phone, calling people, so on and so forth. But on social media, there's like literally ads. Hey, stop calling your friends, stop bugging your family, stop this. You don't need to prospect anymore. All this other stuff, right? And sure, that's fine. There are alternative ways, but one of the things that I know as a coach, coaching over 26 millionaires in the last 12 years, the way that you move the needle with people is you got to be able to speak to the foundation of your business, and that is the people that like, love, and support you in your business. You just have to be able to bring value. It's the most important thing. I've identified that there's 2 reasons why agents don't call their database. Number 1 is their ego, and their ego shows up in so many different ways. You know, I don't want to bug them. I don't want to come across desperate. I don't want to feel like as if though, you know, I need business. You kind of do, right? And then number 2 is I don't know what to say. What do I even tell these people? You know, it is important that you do have something of value that you are calling these people, because when you're that go-to person for them, they're going to be excited about when you call. Hey, what's up? What's going on? What's the latest? What's happening with the economy? What's happening with the interest rates? Is the market going to crash? You know, hey, thanks for the information about, you know, a trust attorney. All of these things, in a sense, that are of value is with what we want to focus on. But let me throw it back to you here real quick, Bryan. So you're coaching people, you're helping them get to that next level of their production, separate from the database. What would be a second item that you feel that is room for improvement?
I brought up the follow-up, and I think that's something we can touch on too, because you could say in a way that's directed to the database, but it's also something people need to be a lot more clear on and intentional on. So I'll ask an agent, okay, right now, right, you're at X amount of production, walk me through your follow-up process. And very rarely do I get handed an itemized sheet with a timeline. Hey, this is what I do. This is like the definition of a lead. That's the first question I ask people. Your follow-up system is going to be based on your definition of a lead. What's a lead to you? I very rarely get specific answers like, oh, somebody who's going to buy or sell in a week or less, or in 30 days or less. Because let's say it's 30 days or less, which is what I recommend for most people. From there, we create the follow-up system, right? And it's going to be tracked, and you know exactly how often and through what methodology you're going to follow up with somebody. And making sure, because this is what I've noticed, once we dive in deeper, people are way too lackadaisical and passive when it comes to follow-up. Very quickly, oh, well, you know, it's time to call them today, I'll call them next week, right? It's very passive. So then the follow-up question I ask them is, have you lost ever a lead buying or selling because you didn't follow up enough. Every hand goes up. So if I go in front of a room, I'll ask them that, and I say, okay, let's look at the flip side. How many of you have lost the lead from following up too much? Very rarely. I got like one guy ever. He's like, yeah, I called this guy like 63 times in 3 days. It's like, all right, bro, that's a little excessive, right? But people have no idea, right? They're making a judgment on what they think is enough without really knowing. They know what too little is, but not too much. So that would be point number two, I would say, Robert, is man, people really need to tighten up their follow-up and be a lot more purposeful and intentional. Forget the word aggressive because that rubs people the wrong way. Be intentional and purposeful. You gave these individuals, this couple, this organization, your word that you would keep in touch and that you would facilitate the transaction for them. You know, honor your word. Go after them. Be persistent and say, I'd love to earn your business, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But I think people always err on the side of being a little bit more passive and cautious versus going full force and really being aggressive and putting their foot forward. Because, you know, I tell them, like, what do you think your client would want? If you ask them, would you want for me to be this passive agent who doesn't really, you know, put their foot down and is kind of like, soft? Or would you rather me be a little bit more hard nosed and aggressive and push a little bit? If you had to choose, Mr. Seller, which one would you choose? I don't know any seller that would say, I want a passive agent, right? So again, we really have to tighten that up. And the moment people start making that shift, their production goes up, because when I look at their lead sheet or whatever, you know, system that they're using, there's already commissions there. They just have to go after them and capture them. And I think for a lot of people, that tweak without adding anything new will just instantly 50, 75, 100% increase the amount of appointments that they're getting, opportunities that they're going to have for listings, buyers, or whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So, James?
I think reverting back to something I had said earlier about calling your database and showing them that you're the expert, to be able to do that, you have to actually be the expert, right? So I think one of the things that a lot of agents fail to do, if we're a good agent, we get caught up in prospecting every day and sitting, all those are the most important things, right? But checking in on your local market and saying, okay, what it actually is the average days on market now? You know, how has it changed over the last 90 days? What is the average price right now? How has that changed over the last 90 days? Because in order to show your clients and your database that you are the expert, you have to actually be the expert. So especially when it comes to listing properties, right? In most markets, we are no longer seeing the type of activity and the type of pricing that we were 60, 90 days ago or more. And you've got to be able to know how to convey that to a potential seller, because you don't want to list a home that sits on the market for 6 months and doesn't sell, right? So understanding where exactly you're at in the market as opposed to 6 to 12 months ago, and being able to effectively convey that to your clients and help them make the right decisions will help put more money into your pocket ultimately, and hopefully save your clients from either losing money or maybe better market for buyers. Now being able to convey that and say, hey, we can do X, Y, and Z and get you some more money or some closing costs or whatever that looks like. So, you know, to be the expert, you actually have to put in the work to be the expert.
Yeah, there's actually an interesting fact based on what you're talking about. And this is from NAR. You guys are going to have to fact check me in regards to this. I don't know the exact number, but I do know it's between 70 to 75% of the buyers that are currently pre-qualified are on the fence, meaning they're pre-qualified, but they're not acting. They have a pre-qualification. They're ready to go. They have everything that's necessary to go out and submit offers, but they're not submitting offers. So we have kind of almost this stalemate between the buyers that are like, let me be a little bit, maybe the market might crash. Maybe the market might dip a little bit better. Maybe I might get a better interest rate. And then the sellers are like, well, I don't know if I really want to put my house on the market right now because it's not as active. It's not as aggressive. You know, John sold his house a year ago and he had like 10 offers. Now it's like crickets. So there's a little bit of a stalemate that's taking place. And the reason I bring this up is because our job is to educate the consumers. And I say this all the time. I'm really well skilled. And from that, what I'm getting at is that there's nothing I could do or say that's going to convince somebody today that they're going to buy or they're going to sell based on my words. But what I can do is take somebody who is thinking about doing it next year, February, March, April, May, by educating them and saying, hey, here's the benefit of doing this now versus waiting until next year. So when you have the skill set, you have the ability to educate yourself and everything that James and Bryan are talking about, it puts you in a position of authority. It puts you in a position where you can respond educatedly and be able to say, here's why you should be doing this now. Do you have the answer for it? So I'm going to encourage you to, based on, again, with what James just mentioned, is look at, what are you telling these people? Are you educating them? Or are you doing a little bit of the passiveness with what Bryan is talking about, and being like, okay, call you back in another 30 days? Call you back in 2 months? Sure, fine. Okay, I'll do that. We got to do our job. And further thoughts in regards to that, either of you guys?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. That's something I've been preaching for a long time, Robert. It's woven into like the sales system that I use. You got to educate people through the questions that you ask and what you do, because ultimately, you said it. We're not convincing people of anything. We're presenting the information to facilitate their decision-making process in whichever direction. If my education reveals that they should wait, great, let's wait. We'll do this in a year. But if in fact it is more beneficial for them to do something now, then through that education, they now have the clarity to say, okay, let's do it now. And we're there to provide people the education and the certainty in their decisions. And that's really it. And to what James said earlier about the database, I wanted to add real quick. If you guys have neglected your database and you're watching this, the next time, right, let's say you do it today or tomorrow and you call, ask them this question. Hey, Jim, hey, it's Bryan. Look, it's been a minute since I called you, wanted to reach out. If you want to apologize, apologize. I don't recommend it, but just say, hey, real quick, if you did come across somebody who wanted to buy or sell, would you feel comfortable sending them to me? Again, if you've neglected them or you've never asked them that question, you want to find out. Now, most people are going to tell you yes. Then there you can instruct them on how to send you the referral, which sets you up properly. But if they say no, then you can get into the conversation and say, well, what would it take for me to earn your business? And you can now have a real conversation with them about it. Or if they say no, you're a jerk off, I never want to hear from you again, then you can take them out of your database, right? But at least you got to it, right? But I think just asking that question for so many people would be so uncomfortable. And I would ask, if it does make you uncomfortable, why? Why would it make you uncomfortable? Now, if you've neglected them, okay. But again, that will set the precedent and it'll help you move forward, right? Because when you do that and they say yes, it further confirms that they're going to send you a referral and they feel comfortable with you, right? But it's something that you guys got to establish. And this will push you more towards the side of not being passive, which is, I think, a big downfall for a lot of agents.
The other thing too is that also identifying who should be in this database. There's a couple of different layers that you're going to want to pay attention to, because what people have a tendency of sometimes when they hear the word database is this collection of all these names and numbers. And there is a version of that. But ideally, you're going to want to start with the organic version of it. And that's going to be your past clients, your family, your friends, people you do business with out in the community. I call them associates. And then your vendors, escrow, title, lender, home warranty, attorney, all these other people in a sense. That's the foundation to your personal database. If you want to add the Zillow calls, the sign calls, the sweet little old lady that gave you a bag of oranges when you knocked 3 years ago, sweet, feel free at it. But you also have to be in a position as you're adding people, making sure you're paying close attention to who and when you're removing these people. Because if they are the first three, past clients, family, friends, I highly recommend do not remove them unless they tell you to. Everyone else, you have to keep that thing clean, because if not, you're just going to have all of these people and you're going to get frustrated because you're having calls or you're getting people that are just like, I don't even know you, I'm not interested, take me off the list. And you're having 2, 3, 5 of those calls a day. You're going to get discouraged as well. So make sure you have the right people, at least for the foundation of your database.
One other thing I was going to piggyback on, Robert, is making sure that moving forward, especially in a market like we're in now, that you're dealing or focusing primarily on the people who are motivated. And that's always the case, right? We're always wanting to focus on the people that are motivated, but even more so now that the market has quote unquote kind of slowed down. If you've got a seller that you've been talking to for 6 months and if I can get my price type of thing, there's just no motivation. That might not be, the most important lead at the top of the lead follow-up list there, right? So focusing your efforts, we're talking about finishing the year strong, focusing the efforts on the most motivated people first, and then going out and finding more of the people that are actually motivated rather than just kind of nursing those buyers and sellers, like you said, been on the fence for a long time.
Yeah, and the other thing too, going back to with what Bryan talked about, as far as the identifying of who those leads are, some of you have this tendency, unfortunately, of going and doing an open house or 2 or 3, going and doing a social media post, going and doing some of these other things, and then you're collecting these 10, 20, 30 names from January, and you're just kind of pushing them along. It's important you identify who are these people that you are identifying as leads, and then for that matter, adding the newer, in a sense, people that are on there. Because when you don't have the right people in that circle, it's gonna get frustrating.